Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the 10 reasons why Russia had gone into Ukraine. And before I start, I just want to let you know that I'm not a pro-war person. I don't like civilians getting killed. I don't like war. I don't like the fact that there's people dying and there's millions of refugees. My thoughts are with the victims and with their families. And this presentation is just giving the reasons why Russia had gone in to Ukraine, trying to understand the Russian point of view. Anyway, enough of me blabbering on. I'm going to start the show now, and just don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Do what you can to support the channel. If you do like the video content and the presentation, don't forget to buy me a coffee, or you can join my Patreon if you really love this channel. So the number one reason Russia had to go into Ukraine is because east of Ukraine you have two areas called Donetsk and Luhansk. So basically there has been a war going on between these breakaway regions and between Kiev, and 14,000 Donetsk people have been killed in these breakaway provinces. So recently Russia has recognized these breakaway provinces, and a lot of these people that live in these areas are Russian speaking. So Putin has taken it very personally that a lot of these people getting killed are Russian people. A lot of them have Russian passports. So Russia feels like it's got to go in to protect its own people. And this is one of the main reasons why Russia feels they had to go in. So like I said, 14,000 people have died since the start of the conflict, and Russia basically said enough is enough, we need to go in because this seems to be mass genocide and they cannot stand back any longer. There was 2 Minsk agreements in place over the years. Both times Kiev has ignored them. It's done nothing to go along with these Minsk agreements, and Russia believes they have been more than patient enough. They tried to push Kiev to validating these Minsk agreements and nothing's happened, and Russia feels they have no choice and they have run out of options and they have run out of patience as well, and that's one of the reasons they've gone in. So you can compare this to what happened in Georgia about 14 years ago, and similar things happened. There was breakaway regions which Russia had supported, and Georgia had a civil war going on with those breakaway regions, and Russia went in to protect those people in the breakaway regions. It was a very short war. I believe it took about 14 days, but then again Georgia is a very small country, and at the time Georgia also wanted to join NATO, and Russia had put a stop to that. As you can see, Ukraine is a much larger country. It's the largest country in Europe, and Russia's going to take a lot longer with its military goals as there is a lot more land to cover. So this is why this war is going to take a lot longer than people imagined. Russia feels it's the victim of double standards because what Russia is doing is very similar to what happened in Yugoslavia. There was false allegations made about Yugoslavia doing genocide, and NATO went in Yugoslavia, bombed it, split the country up. They also protected Kosovo as well as a breakaway region, and it's very similar to what's happening in Ukraine right now with Russia going in to help the people of Donetsk. So you can understand why Russia thinks there's a lot of double standards going on. And at the time when Russia had a war with Georgia, America and its allies were busy in the Middle East, fighting wars in the Middle East, so they did not focus much on Georgia at the time, and that's why there wasn't much news coverage of Georgia as well. However, right now US and its allies are not involved in any wars, so they have Ukraine's full attention. So this is why it is all over the news every single day, covered by every single major paper, Western paper, and this is why the West has given Russia maximum sanctions. So some people may say, why does the US and the West support breakaway regions in some countries and not in others? For example, Why does it support a breakaway region in Taiwan, for example? Taiwan is a runaway province of China. And why does it support Taiwan independence? Why does it support Xinjiang independence as well, away from China? So you see, it's a lot to do with geopolitics. If the US is your friend, they will support you, whether you're doing any genocide, it does not really matter to them. But if you're an enemy of the Americans, or if you're an enemy of the West, they will come down hard on issues like this. So number 2 is NATO. It's very clear that Ukraine wanted to join NATO, and NATO had been reluctant to get Ukraine on board, and the US had been quite reluctant as well. Even though the US and NATO had promised Ukraine there would be NATO membership in the future, they have been dragging their heels. Russia has been completely against it, and Russia wanted some guarantees from NATO that Ukraine will not join NATO in the future. NATO would not give any such guarantees, neither would the US. And that's all they had to say, because Russia's biggest concerns is its security. It's actually scared of NATO, because NATO says it's a defensive organization, but it's not. It's attacked Yugoslavia in the past. It's attacked Libya. It's bombed Libya, killed its leader, Gaddafi. So you wouldn't call that a defensive approach. That is an attacking, offensive organization. Not only that, NATO was involved in the Middle East, and also recently NATO is threatening China and is talking about expanding towards China as well. So China is starting to feel threatened by NATO as well. So it seems like a very offensive organization to me. And Russia has got the same security concerns regarding NATO. It does not want nuclear weapons right on Russia's doorsteps. Again, if there was nuclear weapons on Americans' doorsteps, like in Cuba, for example, you've seen how America reacts with I don't know if anyone remembers the Cuban Missile crisis. So it's a very similar thing. Russia does not want missiles right on its border, and Russia has genuine security concerns, and NATO was not listening to Russia. Even though NATO promised Russia that they would not expand, they have already expanded. I still think this war could have been avoided if NATO had refused Ukraine's application to NATO. That's all NATO had to do, was to say to Ukraine, sorry, you can never join NATO, it's out of the question. Listen to Russia's security concerns and just tell Russia, okay, we're happy not to go right onto your borders, so we're not going to get Ukraine on board. So if you're happy with that, please don't invade Ukraine. Russia would have been happy with that, and this war could have been averted there and then. Number 3, oil, gas and pipelines. So there's quite a few gas pipelines going through Ukraine and going straight into Europe. And this has been there from the Soviet times, and as soon as Ukraine broke up from the Soviet Union, 80% of the gas that was flowing through to Europe was going through Ukraine, and Ukraine was charging billions to Russia. And not only that, Ukraine was also siphoning off a lot of these gas for themselves as well, and Russia was not very happy with that. Obviously, that's not reason for Russia to invade. So what they found is 2 trillion cubic meters of natural gas alongside Crimea and right along the coast near Odessa. And they've also found shale gas around Donetsk and Lugansk areas as well. So this is one of the main reasons why it's important that Russia protects Donetsk and Lugansk as well, because there's shale gas in those areas. And also one of the reasons why Russia took back Crimea was because of the 2 trillion cubic meters of gas found along the Black Sea and alongside Odessa around that sea. So Russia wanted to claim all of that. There was so much gas found alongside those Black Sea deposits that it was rated 14th in the world in terms of natural gas reserve. So it's a lot, 14th in the world. Ukraine then allowed Shell and Exxon to come in, and before they could do anything, Russia took back Crimea, and Shell and Exxon had no choice but to exit, because they were right alongside the Crimean coast. So you might say to yourself, hang on a second, that's a bit greedy, isn't it? Russia going in because of the oil. It's always been about the oil. Well, it's not just that, it's a lot more complicated. So I guess Russia didn't want Ukraine to have the oil, because Russia thought that if Ukraine had all of that oil, Ukraine would have been rich. They would have spent it all on weapons. They would use those weapons to kill more people in Donetsk, and they would use those weapons to, be stronger. And in the future, Ukraine, if it joined NATO, Ukraine would have been a much more powerful country with more weapons, and it would be much more richer. Plus, with the backing of NATO, Russia would have had a lot difficult time fighting Ukraine in the future. So they thought best time to do it is now, and best time to take those gas fields is now, before Ukraine does. So that is one of the main reasons why they've had to go in. Number 4, support Crimea. So Crimea was pretty much isolated on its own. It didn't have direct land access to Russia. So the only access to Crimea was along the sea, and there was also a bridge as well, which Russia spent billions building this bridge across to Crimea. So the bridge is around here, as you can see with the blue mark I've put in there. So they spent billions building this bridge. However, there were still more issues. One of their main ports, Russian ports, is called Sevastopol, and it's based around here where Russia's main navy is. And also they use this port to transport oil, gas, materials to the rest of the world. And so this port is very, very important to Russia, and they need this port, and they need more transport links coming into Crimea, kind of transport goods back and forth. So Crimea was very, very isolated, and in the future, if there is a possible war with NATO, NATO would easily take it back. So what Russia wanted is to have more security guarantees and more protection for Crimea. So right now, if Russia takes all of east of Ukraine and south of Ukraine, there will be links going directly into Russia from Crimea, and it will be much easier to support Crimea from different regions. So this is one of the main reasons why they had to go, just to support Crimea, because Crimea is a very, very important port city for Russia. It's one of the few ports they have which is not iced. The rest of Russia's ports are very much icy or cannot be used. This is definitely one of the main ports where most of Russia's trade goes through. So you see, Crimea is very important to Russia in terms of trade, in terms of logistics, in terms of security, and for all those reasons, it's very important that they link Crimea to the rest of Russia, and they need to make sure it's not isolated. They can secure it because it is one of their main trading hubs and trading ports, as well as military hubs as well. Number 5, water. So one of the other reasons they had to go in was because there was a huge water shortage in Crimea. So when they took over Crimea, there was a river going along from this area straight into Crimea. So what the Ukrainians did was they blocked off this river, so there was no water going into Crimea. So all the Crimean residents were very, very thirsty. There was a lack of water. So Russia had to spend billions in transporting water every single day into Crimea to make the people happy. So that was a big issue. So what they've done now, if you noticed, they've taken over the northern part straight up to the river, and one of their first jobs was to unblock this river that the Ukrainians had blocked. So they have unblocked this river now. So there's going to be a river going straight into Crimea now without any blockage. And you can see one of the first most important things that the military had done was to secure this area around this river, and that was one of their first jobs. And you can see how important Crimea is to Russia, and how important its residents are to Russia, and how important it is to keep them happy, because Crimea is a very, very important part of Russia now, and that was one of their number one priorities that the army had. And they've done that now. Now you have a fresh water going directly into Crimea, and residents are super happy. Number 6, Azhov Militants. So one of the things Putin said before going into Ukraine, and he made a speech, and he said he's going to denazify Ukraine. So what did he mean by denazify? So there's a group of militants called Azhov Militants, and they're very they go back to the Nazi days, and even their symbol is very similar to the Nazi symbol. And they seem to be a very racist bunch. They like to do a lot of ethnic cleansing, and there's a lot of them around the Donetsk area, killing a lot of Donetsk people. So this is why Russia wants to go in and try and get rid of these militants, because they see these militants as a huge security issue alongside their border. And this is why Putin wants to go in, and he said he's going to denazify Ukraine, because he wants to get rid of these very, very racist Nazi-era militants from Ukraine. And this is one of his reasons he had to go in. Number 7, Transmistria. So Transmistria is a very small section just next to Moldova, which is a breakaway region of Moldova. And they used to be Moldova, but they want to be separate from Moldova. And there's a lot of Russian peacekeepers alongside that area. So what Russia wants to do now is go all the way to Transmistria and support those peacekeepers, because those peacekeepers are very much isolated, and they could be in danger if they do not have the support. So what President Putin wants to do is get all of these east side, because mostly it's Russian-speaking people along here. You got the Donetsk and Luhansk areas as well. And I think what Putin's going to do is going to go all the way to here. So he's going to cut off Ukraine from the Black Sea and this sea as well. And it's going to go all the way to support this Transmistria area as well. And there's a lot of Russian peacekeepers there as well, which can help with the battle. So it's very, very important that for Putin, he takes over all of this area for a number of reasons. Not only that, but also he has full control of all the gas fields along here as well. So many, many reasons why Putin wants to take over this area as well as the southern area as well. So I believe he's going to leave the the west and the Kiev part to Ukraine, and pretty much split Ukraine in half. So this is for a number of reasons. As you know, they want to keep Ukraine out the oil fields in the Black Sea, and also they want to affect Ukraine's economy as well. They don't want Ukraine to have access to the sea, and also for security reasons, because there's a couple of stories that UK and NATO members was building ports with Ukraine, military ports, and these could have been used in attacks on Russia anytime in the future, or in Crimea. So this is one of the main reasons why Russia wanted to cut off Ukraine from the sea, for economic reasons, for military reasons, and for security as well. So I mentioned a couple of Black Sea ports which was jointly developed by the UK and also by Ukraine as well. What Russia is afraid of is Ukraine using these ports to ship in military equipment, because at the moment Russia is trying to demilitarize Ukraine as well, so he doesn't want any sorts of danger alongside his borders. So he's trying to get rid of as much weapons from Ukraine as possible, because you have weapons going in or from all over Europe. All the NATO countries are sending Ukraine Stingers and all sorts of other anti-aircraft missiles, anti-tank missiles. So they're going to be coming in through the ports. They're going to be coming in through the borders, through Poland, for example. So Russia is trying to make sure it blocks all of these ports, so nothing comes through the sea. And once it does that, it's going to start blocking some of the borders, so no weapons come through Poland or other friendly countries into Ukraine. So it's a big country, and it's still a long way to go in this war. Number 9 is weapons. So again, one of the speeches that Putin said, he's going to demilitarize Ukraine and he's going to denazify Ukraine. Those are his main objectives. And so he's going to block off Ukraine from the sea. He's going to try and block the ports and everything like that, and he's going to also try and block all the borders. And as you know, you can see there's a lot of borders there. There's huge borders to Moldova, to Poland. Belarus is fine because Belarus is a friendly country to Russia, so they're not worried about the border with Belarus. It's mainly with Poland, Moldova, and the other areas as well. So once those borders are shut and the ports are shut, Russia's going to have to kind of go through the rest of Ukraine and try and get rid of all of these weapons. So there's a lot of Stingers out there, and these Stingers have already taken down a few helicopters, so they're very dangerous. They're top of the range, coming from NATO, and they're very effective. So Russia has got a big job finding and destroying a lot of these weapons that the West has given Ukraine. Number 10, bioweapons and nuclear weapons. So this is very important for Russia. They've been suspected that Ukraine has been developing lots of bioweapons with the US and NATO members, and also been developing its own nuclear weapons as well. So in terms of nuclear weapons, there was recently Ukrainian minister who came out saying they've been enriching uranium to much higher than what the IAEA recommended, and so they've been going with a much higher dose without anyone knowing. And regards to bioweapons, they found a lot of bioweapons labs all over Ukraine, and even though Russia has already taken over a small part of Ukraine, as you can see from the map, they have already found quite a few bio labs as well, and they found a lot of evidence that the US had to do something with there. So they found a lot of US documents and things like that. So this is one of the things that Russia is saying is justified its invasion of Ukraine because of that, because they cannot allow any nuclear weapons or bioweapons in their border. And again, I have to say that this is not independently verified, so I'm not sure whether this is correct or not. This is what Russia is saying. So it's not independently verified, so you've got to take it with a pinch of salt. And that's it really. Those are my 10 main reasons. Let me know if you guys think of any reasons, or what you guys think of this war so far. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll look forward to reading your comments on the comment section. Take care for now, and I'll see you in the next video.